Pay close attention. The news you're about to see is fulfilling Bible prophecy.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you the news that relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Yeshua Hawkins. Katan, in the news, we're going to talk about another country, this time Poland, that NATO is using to build up more around Russia. And Russia's response to that. We're also going to talk about the Ukraine and Russia war, and this time the United States answering some questions on why some of their missiles were sent over to Ukraine before the new aid package was signed and agreed upon. So those stories. We'll also have the latest on the avian flu, the bird flu, getting into some of the milk supply. Some people very concerned there. But first, we spoke about this in recent news, but wanted to shed some more light on what's going on with transplants in America. Now, according to the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, there are over 89,000 people waiting for a new kidney, and less than 6,900 have received one this year. Now, last year, the total number of kidney transplants was 27,332.
Wow. Well, just 12 days ago, a New Jersey woman received the second ever kidney transplant from a pig. At age 54, Lisa Pisano, heart and kidneys were failing her. She told CBS Morning's Dr. John LePuc, quote, "I was pretty much done. I couldn't go up the stairs, I couldn't drive, I couldn't play with my grandkids. So when this opportunity came to me, I said, I'm taking it," end quote. Well, she is the first woman to undergo this procedure.
Well, Dr. Robert Montgomery is the head of the Transplant Institute at NYU Langone Health and explained Pisano had 2 cardiac arrests when she came into the hospital, so this was literally her only hope at survival. So not only did she receive a mechanical heart pump, but they received FDA approval for her to get the kidney transplant from a pig.
Well, as we've reported before, the human immune system, under normal circumstances, will reject animal organs. But in Lisa Pisano's case, Dr. Montgomery and his team used the kidney from a pig who had one altered gene, which makes the organ more readily accepted by the patient. Dr. Montgomery explained how he knew the kidney was working and why they even try to do such a transplant in the first place, saying, quote, "So you release the clamps, and Lisa's blood goes into the kidney, and suddenly it turns this beautiful pink color, a healthy organ. This isn't just about keeping somebody alive, it's restoring them to their lives," end quote.
Well, when asked how she is feeling, she said, "I feel great today compared to other days." Now, her motivation is to get back with her grandchildren and enjoy them growing and developing. Now, the procedure is not fully approved for mainstream as of yet, but was allowed under FDA compassionate use protocol. Now, while the outcome of Pisano is yet to be determined, Rick Slayman, the first living man to receive the same type of kidney transplant, has died less than 2 months after his operation. So his doctors are adamant that his death had nothing to do with the pig kidney and have vowed to continue their research.
Anything for the research. Now turning to news about the spread of H5N1 in the United States, it turns out dairy cows are passing on the bird flu virus through their milk. Traces of the virus have been discovered in pasteurized grocery store milk, but the FDA says there's little risk for humans to contract the virus.
Dr. Celine Gounder is an American physician and medical journalist who specializes in infectious diseases and global health. Now, in 2022, she became a senior fellow and editor-at-large for public health at the Kaiser Family Foundation and was on the advisory board during COVID-19 outbreak. Now, she also contributes to CBS Medical News and was interviewed about this new development with the bird flu being found in consumers' milk supply.
Dr. Grounder explains that the test came back positive, that the genetic material from the virus was discovered. She said, quote, "This could be virus fragments, what's left over after pasteurization. This by itself is not a reason for alarm. There are additional tests being done to see if this is live infectious virus, or is this just the dead virus as we would expect to see," she said.
Well, when asked if a person could get sick if they drank the contaminated milk, Dr. Gounder said, quote, "Presumably this is the leftovers after the pasteurization process. You should not get sick." Well, there was one case of infection in a farm worker in Texas so far, and we know others are being monitored. Now, at the moment, they are trying to grow culture of the fragments to see if they are alive or dead, and therefore will know if the pasteurization process has been successful in killing the virus. As Dr. Gounder says, it works for all viruses they have tested it on so far. But there is no confirmation as of yet. So they still would like to know, is the pasteurization going to kill this virus as well?
Right. Now, it seems a little concerning when they say, there's no fears that the public should have for this being found in the milk, but we need to see if there's live virus in the milk. So it seems like they're trying to stave off a wave of people not purchasing milk, which would throw a whole nother economical wrench in the milk, the dairy business. But of course, this is how it goes in the scientific and health community.
Right, and as we're about to see, it's pretty prevalent in the milk supply.
That's right. Well, the second indication that is being looked at right now is if pigs are being infected. Dr. Gounder explained pigs have traditionally been the mixing vessel for human and bird flu, and that's how you get these Frankenstein scary flus. That's what we have a bit of a blind spot right now. Well, as far as the government and the farming industry, Gounder feels there could be, of course, more transparency on both sides. In other words, it would help if everyone was working together to find the problem and the solution.
So just how much bird flu has been detected in the American commercial milk supply? 1 in every 5 samples, and yes, you heard that right, 1 in every 5 samples have been found to contain fragments of the avian flu. Now, until just recently, 1 in every 3 cows showing symptoms were being tested for the virus. But now, mandatory testing for cows across the country is giving a clear understanding of the scale of this outbreak.
So far, 23 people have been tested for the virus, but the CDC is also monitoring 44 people who have been exposed. While 20% of the milk supply has been found to contain virus fragments, experts say that does not directly correlate to the number of infected herds. It just shows there is a need for monitoring more closely of the situation and better response efforts.
Well, concerning milk itself, regulators are conducting tests throughout the supply chain, which includes the grocery store shelves. Now, concerns have been raised that federal officials should share information they collect with other countries so there can be a better understanding of how the virus is mutating as it spreads. But the question still remains unanswered: if the fragments themselves are able to pass on the virus to people.
Interesting. Well, ATACMS, which are missiles that can travel up to 186 miles, were secretly sent by the United States to Ukraine before the new aid package was agreed upon and signed into law. The White House has admitted to the secret shipments, and it appears they will continue now out in the open under this new aid package. For a better understanding on this, well, please watch the next video.
Here in the U.S. tonight, the Senate overnight passing the aid package for Israel and for Ukraine. President Biden tonight signing it into law. And this evening, we learned the U.S. had already sent long-range missiles to Ukraine, in use already. Here's Selena Wang.
Tonight, as President Biden signs that multi-billion-dollar foreign aid package, the White House confirming the U.S. secretly shipped Ukraine long-range missiles, known as ATACMS, for the first time as the war-torn country fights back Russia. Those powerful missiles, which could travel up to 186 miles and were long sought after by President Zelensky, first used by Ukraine last week for an attack on Crimea and again near Berdyansk.
Will more long-range attackers be sent to Ukraine as part of this $60 billion aid package?
We will send more. I'm not going to get into specific numbers for operational reasons.
The president today saying the U.S. is immediately sending this desperately needed aid.
I'm making sure the shipments start right away. In the next few hours, we're going to begin sending in equipment to Ukraine for air defense munitions, for artillery, for rocket systems, and armored vehicles.
The law also sending $26 billion to Israel and $8 billion to Taiwan. Tonight, Biden praising Democrats and Republicans for pushing through this deal approved by the Senate overnight, after months of some House Republicans railing against aid for Ukraine.
It's going to make America safer. It's going to make the world safer.
Well, Katan, you can see President Joe Biden continuing to support Ukraine, saying he's going to continue sending these missiles as they need them. Well, so what are other nations doing to make their nation and all other nations safer? Look at this next video on where the money is going.
Global military spending is at an all-time high, increasing in all 5 geographical regions. So why are nations racing to replenish their stockpiles? As tensions escalate in the Middle East, Western nations impose a new round of sanctions against Iran. Will that impact the nation's ability to wage a war? So Russia's invasion of Ukraine, escalating geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, and China's military buildup in the South China Sea. The world is now facing a period of increased instability. Nations right across the globe are boosting their defenses. Military spending reached an all-time high of nearly $2.4 trillion last year. And the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, that's SIPRI, says for the first time in 15 years, the increase is spread right across all 5 geographical regions. So let's take a look at it. The top 5 spenders, respectively, were the US, China, Russia, India, and Saudi Arabia. Now, China boosted spending on its military for the 29th straight year, raising it to an estimated $296 billion. Beijing's military build-up and worsening tensions in the region also prompted its neighbors to dedicate more funds to their militaries. And the Middle East saw the highest growth rate in a decade, with Saudi Arabia its top spender. The kingdom is followed by Israel, which has increased its expenditure to $27.5 billion. This spending surge mainly driven by Israel's war on Gaza. While the war in Ukraine was the main driver of European defense spending, and Russia's military expenditure, it surged to around $109 billion. By comparison, Ukraine has the 8th largest military budget at $65 billion and receives military aid from more than 30 countries. Among them is the United States, which has committed to $95 billion in foreign aid for Ukraine, for Israel, and for other US allies.
These are not normal times, they're not. The world is destabilized and it's a tinderbox. It's a dangerous time. 3 of our primary adversaries, Russia and Iran and China, are working together, and they're being aggressors around the globe. And they're a global threat to our prosperity and our security. Their advance threatens the free world, and it demands American leadership. If we turn our backs right now, the consequences could be devastating.
Well, you know, several years ago, numbers that were in the billions or tens of billions, and then kind of lately hundreds of billions were being thrown around. But now we're seeing military spending in the trillions. Think how much better that money could be spent actually helping to bring peace instead of bringing about more war and death. Well, this next video shows the rising tensions between Russia and NATO due to some recent activities via Poland.
The Polish president expressed willingness to host American nuclear assets in Poland, which could bring NATO and Belarus-based Russian nuclear assets pointing right at each other. Russia slammed the Polish president's attempt, even as Russia itself works to nuclearize its military district, which lies right across NATO borders. What is Russia's Leningrad military district, which it plans to nuclearize? What is Russia preparing for? Can Poland indeed host nuclear assets? I'm Shivan John. Now this is Game Plan. After Finland and Sweden's NATO accession, Russia repeatedly expressed concerns over the deployment of NATO troops and sophisticated weapons across its border. In response, Putin signed a decree re-establishing the Moscow and Leningrad military districts in the northwest Russian region, including Moscow, Kaliningrad, and St. Petersburg, to effectively posture against Poland, Ukraine, and NATO's northeastern border along the Baltic states and Finland. The military district is a type of theater command with units of all military branches, ground forces, air force and air defenses, and the navy. The Leningrad military district, close to the Finnish NATO border, will host Russia's nuclear-capable Iskander-M missile systems to carry out relevant operations in case of a NATO threat. Now, the Russian Iskander-M is a short-range ballistic missile system forming the core of Russia's modern precision strike capacity. The Polish president on a recent trip to the US expressed his willingness to host US nukes under NATO's nuclear sharing program, which enables NATO members without nukes of their own to take part in NATO's nuclear deployment. The Russian Foreign Ministry immediately denounced Duda's statement, calling it provocative. It said that if Poland hosts NATO nukes, Russia will add Polish territories to its list of potential targets in case of a war with NATO. It was a direct threat to Poland. The scale of nuclear saber-rattling from Russia and NATO states has been unprecedented. With the $95 billion foreign security aid bill passed, it is now a matter of time before US weapons once again reach Ukraine. Now, I'd like to remind you that months before these developments, we told you right here on Game Plan that Europe could be the center for the next nuclear war. And now we're seeing those assessments increasingly becoming reality.
Katan, these type of moves continue to allow that region to remain very tense. When you continue to build up around Russia, Russia has repeatedly said they're not going to put up with it. They've been very patient so far, but eventually you think their patience is going to wear out.
Yeah, it's getting there.
Well, Gaza, along with other nations, are calling the discovery of mass graves deeply disturbing. Now, Washington is calling for answers to the humanitarian crisis, and the EU spokesperson, Peter Stano, said in a press conference, "We are greatly concerned by the discovery of mass graves. This is something that forces us to call for an independent investigation because it creates an impression that there has been a violation of human rights committed."
That's right. The U.S., on the other hand, is not ready to call for an independent investigation, but would instead be talking to other countries, i.e. Israel, along with reviewing photographs of the alleged atrocities. Now, the U.S. is leaning on Israel completing an investigation, and of course this is common when Israel is accused of a war crime, which of course frustrates the victims and the international community as a whole. Instead, what has the U.S. recently done?
Well, President Joe Biden signed into law yet another U.S. military aid package to Israel. This being done, of course, doesn't signal a coming closure to the war in Gaza, nor a condemnation by the U.S. of Israel's contributions to the death and the destruction in that region.
That's right. And that death and destruction, as we've seen since October 7, has far surpassed, the, if you want to call it, the equal nature of what the Palestinians did. Not to say that it was right in any way, shape, or form, but, you would think that in a land that's, generally called, the land of peace, that instead of going to war and fighting and making others suffer, they would be trying to find a peaceful solution. But that is not taking place. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, said, we have the right to defend ourselves, and we will do so until we feel justified.
Right. But that's why the acts of retaliation never solve anything. One nation just continues to try to outdo what was done to them. Like, we'll make them pay 10 times over. And like you said, it just continues to snowball. It's just a terrible, vicious cycle.
Yes, no peace in war. Well, if you would like to learn how you can actually find peace and bring peace to your family and community, contact the House of Yahweh. And when you do contact the House of Yahweh, don't forget to request your free copies of the Prophetic Word magazine and the monthly newsletter. Here's how.
To contact the House of Yahweh, you can write them at the House of Yahweh, P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can call them at 1-800-613-9494. Visit them by going to any of their websites. You can go to yahweh.com, YerushalHawkins.com, or Yahweh'sBranch.com. You can also visit our website by going to YPNnews.com. If you would like to email the House of Yahweh, you can do so by emailing info@yahweh.com. For any international calls, please call the number that's on your screen. And don't forget to check out the Yisrael Says program by going to YisraelSays.com and the Ask Yisrael program by going to AskYisrael.com.
Well, don't go anywhere, because up next is another classic sermon by Yisrael Hawkins. For all of us here at YPN News, I'm Katan Alexander.
And I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
Thank you for watching.